I'm Daniel Kopp, certified financial planner and financial therapist, and welcome to the Widow Life and Money podcast. As the founder of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, I understand the profound impact that grief can have on our lives. My mission is to share the insights I've gained as a widower, coupled with financial planning expertise, to assist you in navigating your unique journey through loss. In this episode, we are joined by Jennifer Carazo, a remarkable individual whose journey from military spouse to Gold Star widow has been both challenging and inspiring. Jennifer's story is marked by resilience and the profound transformation of grief into purpose, notably through her work with the Sugar Bear Foundation, which she founded in honor of her late husband, Mario Sugar Bear Carazo. We discuss the trials and tribulations of military life, the strength found in community bonds, and the incredible ways in which personal loss can catalyze a commitment to helping others. Jennifer shares how she has supported her family through numerous deployments and the creation of a nonprofit that empowers other Gold Star families. Thank you for being part of our community. Together, let's embrace the shared stories and support each other as we seek a future filled with hope and stability. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer. I'm so glad to have you here. It's going to be a lovely story, hearing the way you've turned your pain into purpose and learning more about the work that you've done, taking your lessons learned as a Gold Star spouse. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always an honor and a joy too to not only share my story, but to share that of my late husband's Sugar Bear and just how he's inspired me and really helped me move forward. As ironic as that might sound. So thank you for having me.
Yes, always love hearing the origin story of people who are in this space, not just personally, but obviously the professional overlap that comes. You shared in some of the information I was reading about you about how you and Mario met way back in the day when he was just a young midshipman. What was that like for you? Did you have any experience with the military life? Did you know what you were signing up for when you fell in love with this guy?
No, interestingly enough, I did not. And especially, growing up, I grew up in Pensacola, which is, the cradle of naval aviation. And I had a lot of good friends who came from military families. And I actually swore Top Gun, I'm dating myself here, but Top Gun came out when I was in high school. And I was like, oh, never, 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 don't want to date anybody in the military. No way. And then I met Mario, Sugar Bear,
Wow.
and everything changed. Everything changed in that moment, and I can say now our kids are older. We did meet at a dive bar, but it was very wholesome, I swear. But yeah, it everything I said I would never do, I did, and it was the best decision of my life. Absolute best decision.
So he's not yet commissioned, so you don't know exactly what his life is going to be, at least aviation, not yet on the future. So it wasn't like you're like, oh, a pilot, and all that came to be. So you start to get to know each other, you're dating, you ultimately marry. Talk to us about what those early years of married and military life was like for both of you.
Well, I got a little bit of a taste. So Mario was a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and I was actually going to school in Alabama at the time. So right off the
Okay.
bat,
All right.
we learned, this long distance thing, and I think that was definitely good preparation for the deployments down the road. Um, but so we dated actually for 5 years. I was 18 when I met him, and so we dated for 5 years. And he literally had just been winged when shortly after we got married. So we had did the long distance stuff, and then rolled right into our marriage. I was in graduate school. He was still doing some flight training. So it was busy. It was busy right from the beginning. And in fact, we never even had a honeymoon because he had to sort of he left already for some workups. He was already gearing up for his first deployment. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
very busy. I quickly made friends with some of the other wives that were in the squadron with us and formed some amazing bonds right off the bat with women, with families that I am still to this day connected to. We're talking 30-year friendships here. So difficult, yes, but from the get go, just a ton of support. Ton of support.
I'm so glad you found that community early on. Sounds like it really has made a difference, like you said, lasting even until today. So, what were some other things that were a little bit of culture shock for you in those early years?
Again, I think a lot of it came from us dating. Learned a lot about obviously service academies and what that looked like. And Mario had done a really good job of briefing me while he was at the academy. I would go there a lot for functions, and I learned a lot about obviously his heart and his desire to serve and what that was going to mean. And he didn't always paint the prettiest pictures in the sense, and I mean that in a good way, in that it was going to be difficult. It was going to be hard. He was gone all the time, and I mean that was hard as a young married couple. Um, but he had really shared a lot of that insight with me while we were dating, and then things came to life, so to speak, in those early years. So there were a lot of times that I was on my own. He was far away. And this was before the advent really of cell phones and all of that. I mean, his first deployment, AOL came out, if that tells you. So we were blessed in that we got email. But I still remember sitting around waiting for the phone calls because you didn't know. He would email me and try to tell me when he was going to be around. So there were, it was a very different scenario than what I had grown up with my parents, with my family. Seeing a father that came home every night, 5, 6 o'clock at night, everyone around the table for dinner. We didn't have that. But again, we made some of the best friends that we ever could have asked for. So much support, and we had a lot of adventures. So there was a bit of a trade off there, definitely a bit of a trade off. And I honestly, to this day, can say I would not have changed anything in those early years. It really helped me become a stronger person. And I always say, I think prepared me for what was going to happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing it. It's always so fascinating learning about the intersection of personal, professional identities overlapping. You referenced like going to graduate school earlier. What would the career kind of decisions? How were you having to integrate some of those personal goals into this whole early stage of life together?
That's a good question. So initially, I had wanted to be a lawyer, go to law school, but I knew I wanted to marry Mario, and we had actually thought that we were going to be moving around a lot because that's usually the typical scenario for the military. However, though, with him being a pilot and what he was going to be flying, it didn't turn out that we were going to be, or that we did move around as much as most people think. So I decided instead to get a master's and pursue teaching. And regardless, though, he was always 1,000% behind me and me having a career and me doing what was going to make me happy. Very much supported that. Just he was all about me having my own identity, my own career, and so whatever he could do to facilitate that, he was definitely on board. So that's what I did. I pursued a master's, and I taught from middle school all the way through the university level, and for gosh, about 12 years, in fact. So yeah.
Fascinating. So what tell me about like how you decided to grow your family, what that was like, and especially as you moved through these parallel paths of like spouse, career, and now family. How did all those work together in those
I have to say, we were pretty fortunate, at least with our son's birth. Mario and I were both planners. We and we thought we were doing a good job of that. And for the most part, we did. We were able to, um, he was able to take jobs. The planning involved, of course, but he was able to take jobs where maybe he wasn't going to be deploying, and that all worked out seamlessly with our son's birth. With our daughter, not so much. He ended up being deployed when our daughter was born. But again, very blessed in that I had my parents. They were out with us helping with the kids because he was gone so much. And then again, just that community of spouses who jumped in and supported us, supported me. Never, even to this day, felt like I was on my own or lacking anything. So there was planning involved there, but best laid plans don't always work out. But again, it goes back to that resiliency that you learn as a spouse. And at that point, we were married 7 years before we had our son, and then 9 years when we had our daughter. So kind of learned the ropes a bit and felt prepared, um, and just a lot of prayer, and but also the acknowledgement of a lot of blessings and support.
Yeah. So, how many deployments did you ultimately go through together over the course of his career?
So I believe it was his last one was his seventh deployment, which at that
Okay.
time it did feel like a lot. He served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He was in Iraq twice, and then Afghanistan was his last. But compared to after losing him, and what's been sort of the current situation or more current situation, I don't feel like that seven is that much if you compare that to what our military has done, what our military families have endured since that. At the time, it felt like a lot to me, to us, our children. At that point, we're really starting to recognize and ask a lot, "Where's Daddy going?" We would say trips. Daddy has a trip to go on, and I remember it was starting to get a little bit harder with the kids. So that's part of their career choice there. It gets difficult, I think, as time goes on, especially with children.
Yeah. So many difficulties and hardships that the family has to bear too. So, what was that last deployment like? What stands out to you when you reflect on some of those memories together?
It was chaotic from the get-go. um, he did have workups. Perhaps we knew he was going to be going. um, Typical to form for most military families, and in gearing up for deployment. I was having some car issues, and we thought the car had been fixed. And we drove that day from Carlsbad to Miramar in San Diego, about a 45-minute drive. And as we're approaching the base, realized the car the car's not fixed. And I mean, he's already running late. Sweat is just profusely dripping from him, and he's panicked and feeling guilty. And I'm stressed, but I'm trying to comfort, reassure him, "It's fine. I'll handle it. Don't worry about it. It's all good." But I could see that. And then we got to the base, and he really had to go. And it was a quick goodbye. It was a very quick goodbye, um, quicker than I remember other ones being. And in hindsight, I feel like there was some symbolism to to that. Um,
Mm,
but yet, in those moments, and today, I just I could still feel his concern, his love for me, and his guilt, so to speak. Here he is again, going, no idea when he's coming back. Leaving me with the two kids
right.
and all of that. And but yet he had a job to do, and he wanted to be there. He definitely wanted to be there. He felt a calling. He felt he needed to be there. And as always, I supported him. I always wanted to support him, and that carries over a little bit into today, what I'm doing. So
Yeah. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about what that early experience of when you crossed over from military spouse now to Gold Star spouse. Again, many of our listeners are so much earlier in their journey. What were the things that stood out to you in those early hard days of grief and sorrow and loss?
just absolute shock, and just thinking that, how am I not going to see him, and instantly transferring over to our children. How am I going to raise our two children without him, especially our son? We have a son and a daughter, and who's going to be there to teach our son to be a man with the convictions that his father held. I had no idea how I was going to do it. No idea. Um, just just shock, horror, all the things. I get still to this day. I mean, and we're 16 years out, cannot articulate what that was like. I just remember being so focused on our kids, but also focusing on Mario, in that I did not want to let him down. That car story to me sort of epitomizes, and it's hard to convey this. I knew he did not want to let me down, let us down. And for me, that was what I felt towards him. I did not want to let him down as a spouse. I didn't want to let him down as a mother with our children. So I just, definitely hid my emotions as best as I could from our kids. I wanted them to know mommy's got this. Like, yes, this is the ultimate, most awful thing that could happen, but it's going to be okay. We're going to get through
Mhm.
this. We're going to, it's going to be fine. Even though in my mind, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I just, can't even, like I said, I cannot even articulate, but I just focused on those two things, making sure that I did not let Mario down, but making sure I didn't let my kids down. I never wanted our kids to feel like I let them down. And it's interesting because just a couple weeks ago, something came up, and my daughter said to me, she's like, I think back to when we lost daddy. And she's like, you were really strong, but she goes, I knew your heart was broken. But at the same time, she felt
Mm,
a
yeah.
lot of strength and support. And so that was very important to me, because I always say I never wanted my kids to think we lost daddy and we lost mommy in the process.
Yeah. Wow. Your strength and even shines through now, and just reflecting on what it's like. But in those early days, the pain is sharp, it's severe, it's so heavy. You referenced a little bit in there of like how your faith and the community around you rallied. What was that like? How did your personal faith evolve in those early days of grief?
So I'm Catholic, and my Maria was Catholic as well. Um, it just played a pivotal role. My faith, my belief in God that He was going to get us through this, and knowing, I mean, not to be graphic, but you know, Mario didn't just lie down and go to sleep one day peacefully. He was killed in a brutal way, and knowing that as well, that trauma is horrific. But with that, because I have a faith in God, and Mario had a faith in God, I also knew he was with in heaven with God, with Jesus, and he was taken
Hmm.
care of. And so all of those earthly
Mm,
worries and concerns were gone for him. And also I had to take comfort in that. I also learned to take comfort in knowing, okay, if it was his time to go, he died doing what he loved. There's no other
yeah.
way that he would wanted to have left this life than to be flying, to be with his Marines, and to be once again providing for somebody else, taking care of people. That
Yeah.
that was what I believe he was put on this earth to do. So for me, all of that, plus an incredible support source that we had from our military, our Marine Corps community. Again, to this day, we've just had an abundance of support. Um, it's just played such a pivotal role in moving through all of this. I had a fellow widow say to me early on, "You'll get to the other side." And I just kind of smiled politely, and I thought, "Oh, she's crazy." Like, just, it's like, oh, whatever. But there, I cannot say enough. There is hope. And so early on, you're probably thinking, yeah, whatever. But hold that hope. You know, have faith. I cannot emphasize that enough. Have faith, have hope. You will get to a good place again in life. Absolutely, you will.
Yeah. So powerful hearing your personal experience of, like you said, hope, however tiny it was in those early days, but also recognizing in your case, right, your faith bore you up, right?
Mhm.
The grace that surpasses understanding, the peace that surpasses understanding in the midst of that. But you're not just grieving as a spouse. You referenced it a little bit. You're grieving as a
Mhm.
parent, not just the strength that you already talked about, but what did you see in your children? What were some of the things, especially now, many years later, you reflect back on that were just helpful things in that role of grieving as a parent, watching your children grieve?
One thing, like I said, that I did, I tried to somewhat keep my emotions in check. I tried not to fall apart, if you will. We went through our normal daily routines, and then at night, after the kids were in bed, that's where I would usually just fall apart, kind of in private.
Yes.
We always talked about Daddy. We always talked about Mario. To this day, I still, we did not. Pictures remained up. It was just. I mean, Daddy was in heaven, but his spirit is there. He's still watching over us. He's still in our hearts. So I made it a point to always talk that way. The other thing, and I would give this advice again wholeheartedly, everybody from the military community, I welcomed in. Doors were open at our home. They're still open at our home.
Hmm.
Anybody that wanted to come over, whatever, didn't care a time of day, they were welcome. And I wanted my kids to see that, to feel that, to have those connections, those bonds. I wanted them to see how
Yeah.
much their father meant to everybody, and hoping that would provide comfort, but also, just to sort of keep that community available to them. I think that played a pivotal role. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be with the kids. There's going to be difficult times ahead for them. Um, but I also learned to give myself grace. And this was their childhood was not going to be the childhood that I had. My parents are still alive. They're 86 and
Hmm.
92. They
Yeah.
still live with me. They had moved in a few years before this with us to help, because Mario was deployed a lot, and they wanted to be a part of the kids' lives. They're still a part of the kids' lives, but for me, I don't know, knock on wood, what it's like to lose a parent,
Yeah.
because I still have mine. So that's, and hopefully I will for a while, long time yet. Um, but I didn't know. I still don't know what it's like for my children to grow up the way that they did. And so that was something that stayed with me. It still stays with me. But once again, I feel like we're at the other side now. The other thing I remember, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to or will relate to, anytime there was a school play or a sports function, my husband used to
Yeah.
coach our son's soccer team. And they understood when Daddy was on trips if he couldn't be around, but otherwise he always made everything. He was the first dad, I think, in their school that went on field trips, that volunteered to go on field trips. So he was really an integral part in their lives, in their daily activities. And so when that was gone, and we would go to events, my parents and I just always, just inside, the pain was torturous for me because I worried how that was going to affect them later in
Mm.
life, and always made it a part to say to them, and I still say to them now, college graduations and everything, daddy's with us, daddy's watching, daddy's so proud of you, he'd be
Yeah.
here, and then they're young adults now, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so interesting to think about. I love the way you shared it, right? He's physically absent in the sense,
Right.
but his influence, his spirit is here. It lives on because
Absolutely.
it lives on in you and it lives on in them. And the impact is more than just, genetics. It's philosophy and values. I love how you
Mhm.
emphasize that of carrying on and the mission. Obviously, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Before we go there, though, we've referenced obviously Sugar Bear and Mario a couple times. I'd love for you to share with the audience about how that came to be and ultimately, right, the name of what you named the foundation, Sugar Bear Foundation.
So Sugar Bear was his call sign. And sometimes call signs are not aren't
You don't speak them in
there's
polite company sometimes, yes.
yeah, something exact perfect way of saying that. Luckily for us, he had a really family friendly call sign. And it basically just came from being in the ready room one day. One of his senior officers, when they were getting ready for a brief, just kind of pointed at him and said, just sort of dubbed him Sugar Bear. Um, a little bit because he looks, I'm again dating myself, the cereal, the Sugar Bear cereal, and the dancing and all that, kind of looked like him. And so, but lucky for us, it was a sweet name, and I think it was incredibly fitting for him. So, yeah, that's where the name came from. We I always get asked that question,
Yeah.
but I think once people hear it, they understand. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's funny. I had two call signs during my military service time, and the stories behind them were a little bit less kosher than the actual name itself. So it's always interesting to hear that. Now, you referenced his passion, and ultimately that spilled over into what you did. So, what were the things that you thought about before you ultimately decided to launch the Sugar Barrel Foundation? How did you come to that place, and what was that like, especially transforming this purpose into action?
Sure. So, kind of going back to when you were asking me about those early years. And for me at the time, I was teaching. I was actually teaching online for one of the military universities. And even that, I was thinking, how am I going to do this? I mean, this is now the way that I would reference things is this is like a full time deployment, raising the kids without Mario,
Yep.
without Sugar Bear here. Um, but part of what again made me feel good and provided comfort to me connecting with that idea that I didn't want to let Mario down. Anytime I got an invitation to anything after he died, I went. I went because that was my way of saying thank you. Thank you for including us. Thank you for including me, recognizing Mario, our family, whatever. I went. And those invitations over time began to change. I started getting invited to speak at events, to sit on various boards, to attend events of different organizations, whatever. And I started to go, and I started to get involved in the Gold Star community. And even though we were receiving just a ton of love, support, I didn't feel like we were lacking anything. I was meeting other families who were facing challenges, who had some specific needs.
Yeah.
And I was taking very sort of copious notes in my head, like, well, this just shouldn't be. This needs to be rectified. And one of the things Mario taught me very early on in our relationship, and especially early on in our marriage, if you've got a problem, you need to fix it. You don't just sit on the sidelines. You do something about it. So I'm going through the next couple years, and I really am. I'm taking notes, and I'm thinking this is just so wrong. And in 2016, a colleague of his, a little bit of a long story that I'll try to condense, but colleague of his had an opportunity to form a beer company. And with that, they were going to donate proceeds to a nonprofit. And he came to me and said, you need to form a nonprofit. And I was like, yeah, sure I do. And he's like, no,
Okay.
I'm serious. But in my head I'm thinking, yeah, I could do
Yeah.
this. I know what I want to do. And so it was very important to me that we did stuff that we weren't going to reinvent the wheel. I wanted to offer programming that nobody else was doing, and that
Right.
I felt like was really going to change the trajectory of these families' lives. So me being a spouse, having children, right away, that was my focus. That's what I knew. That was my wheelhouse. And I wanted to take all the support and love and all of that myself and my children had received and project that into this nonprofit with programs that were not out there, with things
Okay.
that I
Yeah.
knew or I felt were going to help these spouses and their kids create a whole new path for themselves, because that's what in essence eventually happened to me. I left the teaching world. I came on, after several years, came on full time with the Sugar Bear Foundation, and it's totally restructured my life. I have a new purpose now outside of my children, outside of my family. And but yet Mario is still with us. He is the mission in itself. He is the inspiration to this day, and we're continuing his legacy of service in the work that we do.
Yeah, it definitely stood out to me, the emphasis on education and empowerment. So how is it you saw those gaps and you started to fill them with things like I saw like coaching classes, nutrition, financial education and literacy. How have you seen that work evolve and the impact in the people that you've reached?
Oh, completely. We're helping kids get into college. I mean, we're providing scholarships for college, graduate school. So one of the things with my kids, again, education was a very big part of our lives, a very big part of Mario's life as a first generation American. And so as my kids were growing up, different points they needed tutoring, and it became expensive. And I was like, gosh, nobody out there really is offering this, or offering it in a way where it's not, okay, these are your 6 sessions and then you've got to move on. Helping families get into college. When my kids were applying to college, it was like, this is all new to me. This is very different than what I had to do. And now I'm, a solo parent. How do I
Yeah.
navigate this and working and all that? So we've created programming with heavy emphasis on education, on career, on financial literacy, the health component, all of that that's not out there. Virtual tutoring, college consulting, helping spouses find jobs, resumes, all of that. Because if you can have
Yeah.
that economic piece put together, that will take everything from a holistic manner and just bring life together for these families. If they're not having to struggle and worry about the financial component, that just takes such a huge weight off off of their off of their shoulders, off of their lives, and it makes a difference. A lot of our military families, the kids, before even losing the service member, may have a learning disability, and they need special attention with that. Well, now imagine you've removed the service member who's died. You've got that grief, that trauma. They definitely need ongoing academic support.
Yeah.
Where are they going to find that? So these were things to me that I wasn't seeing out there for our families, and that became programming that I knew that we needed, and that was going to need to be long term. And so that's the stuff that we do, because I really feel it's going to change the trajectory of these families' lives. And it also, it honors that service member. It honors that loss that they're feeling. I just feel like it's
Yeah.
incredibly impactful, and that's what we're hearing from our families, is that we're changing their lives, we're giving them hope, and we're removing that burden. To date, all of our families registered with us are women, are heading up the families. We serve both Gold Star spouses, husbands and wives, but to date we just have all women.
Yep.
And that's what we've been working towards, is trying to remove those burdens and provide that support in a way that is tangible. It's making an impact. So that's what we work towards doing. That's our long-term goals right there.
Well, just on behalf of those who have benefited and those who in the future will benefit, thank you for you doing the work, right? It's this legacy of service that you had
Mhm.
both beforehand, both as a military spouse, and obviously you've shared so much of what Mario Sugar Bear had in his life philosophy. So it's so powerful to now see it, like you said, lived out in reality, the actual impact that boots on the ground, touching people's lives in these various ways. So, what's the best way for people to go and learn more about these programs? You mentioned registering. Could you give just a quick tutorial and walking through what that would
Yeah.
look like?
So best thing is to go to our website, which is www.thesugarbearfoundation.org. Contact our admin address, which is admin, I am, at thesugarbearfoundation.org. That's the best. And reach out if they want information about our programs, how to get registered. We say registered because that's sort of us doing our due diligence. As you can imagine, we do have a lot of people that might even say they're Gold Star
Right,
surviving spouses, and they're not. So this is our way not to be nosy or anything like that, but just to make sure that people are who they say they are. And
right.
once they get registered with us, then Erica Brophy, who is also a Gold Star spouse, she lost her husband a few years ago. She meets with them, goes over individual resources, if they, have any budgeting concerns, if they're looking to get a job, whatever their specific needs are. She then connects them with our programming applications, that type of thing. Or she will personally, we like to say, do a warm handoff with another organization that can specifically meet their needs. We don't just like to say, here you go, here's a list. We like to make those actual connections for them
Yeah,
because there's a lot. There's just a lot that
yeah,
comes with this, and we get it. We get that they're running the household now, and whether they're working, raising children, whatever, there's just a lot that comes with it. And actually, most of my team um, are women. We have several that are widowed, so we get it. We're you know walking that path as well, so we understand.
yeah. The power of that lived experience. That even though it's all about obviously having gone through similar experiences, everyone's grief journey is unique. But it's also I found the shared language, which is some things you don't have to explain. Sometimes you don't have
Exactly.
to try to explain, which is so difficult
Exactly.
otherwise. Yeah,
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, you're absolutely correct.
yeah. So I'm so glad to hear all the work that you're doing, Jennifer. I really appreciate you sharing both the personal and the professional path that you've taken, the journey that you've been on. You've been on this side of the grief journey for many, many years now. Any final words of encouragement to our listeners who are most of them just earlier on in their journey?
Like I said, I had someone early on tell me you'll get to the other side, and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But honestly, you do. I can, without a doubt, say that my life is very complete. It will never be complete without Mario, but he definitely lives in my heart, and I feel his presence every day. There's joy again. My kids have turned out beautifully. Very proud of them, and I'm living a very full and happy life. And so there is joy again, there is beauty again. You can find fulfillment again in life, and you can be happy and laugh and just feel joyous again. Have faith, pray, but have that hope that you will get to that other side. And if anything, knowing that that is what your spouse would want for you. They would
Yeah.
want you. Early on, I read something and I thought, oh my gosh, it struck a chord with me, but it was true. Their time on this earth obviously was over, but we're still here. We're still here, and we matter, and we have purpose, and live life for them. Live life for them, and just welcome all the beauty that will come your way, because it will, it definitely will.
I can echo so much of that on my own side of the grief journey. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing. We'll have links and resources in the show notes to the website that you talked about, to the email, other places where they can connect with you on social media to learn more, to stay connected, and also just continue to be a part of this journey together that we're all on. Thank you again for coming on. Really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me this chance. I always, like I said, I always feel honored and blessed to be able to do so. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's definitely needed, and you're making an impact as well.
All right, listeners, we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Widow Life and Money. Want even more resources and information on how to make better financial decisions along your grief journey? Go to www.wisestewardshipfp.com/WLM/EP12, where you'll find the specific resources from this episode. While there, you can also schedule a free, no obligation conversation with Daniel. If you enjoy the content, please leave us a review and share with other widows who would also benefit from this information. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be used as the basis for legal, tax, or investing advice. Daniel Kopp is the founder of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, LLC, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Opinions and information expressed are as of the date of recording and are subject to change. The views and opinions of guests on this program are not necessarily those of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning. Daniel and Wise Stewardship Financial Planning are not affiliated with guests or their business affiliates unless otherwise stated.